Hello and welcome to the channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how to take better car photos with the following 5 essential tips. Now, cars are a difficult thing to photograph because they can't change into an outfit, they can't smile, they can't tell you that you're taking too long to take the picture. Unless you're David Hasselhoff in Knight Rider and your car is kit, but that's a very niche situation. Nor can they climb over a fence for the perfect background. They are in fact rather large, which makes it difficult to introduce background blur. And they're also rather hard to maneuver, which makes it more difficult to find the right location. Still, with the 5 following tips, you should be able to make life just a little easier. And in fact, all of these tips can be applied to other types of photography, portrait or landscape, for instance. Now, I'd like to make this a regular feature where I actually edit your photos. So if you have any cool photos, particularly car ones, but doesn't have to be, then get in touch. I think it's atribecalledcars@gmail.com. Send the stuff over, and if it's a cool photo or I can make it cool, I'll show you how I did it and I'll make a video. Now, my first tip is make your photo say something. I don't mean actually get it to talk or do like a ventriloquist thing, that's a bit weird. But what I mean is a lot of people say a photo should tell a story. I think that makes things complicated. I think what's better to have in your head is a statement, a sentence that your photo aims to convey. So it might just be you're walking around in Knightsbridge, you see a cool car, in which case your photo is just, I want to make this car look cool. Or it could be, I want to take a picture of my car at the sunset because we've had a cool day, it's the end of a cool trip or whatever. You just need a short description that gives you a theme before you press the button to take the photo. Then use that theme for the whole photo. So if you're doing a race and it's really frantic and the pit lane's a bit crazy, lots of cars coming in and out, then maybe do an angle that's a bit weird, that's a bit unusual, because that might create a sense of unease and the chaos, that kind of stuff. Likewise, if you want to show speed, lower your shutter speed and let the blur come into the picture, because that will emphasize the movement of the car or the people or whatever it is you're trying to capture. A little pro tip, if you lower the shutter speed but follow your subject, the background will blur, but you'll actually maintain clarity on the moving object itself. Whatever it is, just imagine to yourself that someone is seeing this photo for the first time. They have no idea what's going on, but you're showing to them through the photo exactly what you had in mind. Now, tip number 2 is a lot easier to implement. This one is straighten edges or the horizon. Now, cars obviously spend most of their life outside unless you have some sort of weird car elevator and you live in a mansion or you just like it in your living room, whatever, I'm not going to judge you. But basically, there is a chance there will be a landscape of some sort. Now, a thing that can really ruin a photo is a wonky horizon, because your eye doesn't see that naturally unless you tilt your head. But if you're walking normally, that is what you would see. So what you should do is use Photoshop, Lightroom, or some sort of image editing app. There are lots for smartphones if you've taken a picture on your phone, not a problem at all. What you want is normally the crop rotation tool. And when you do that, typically you'll get grid lines, and that will allow you to line up the horizon with the straight edges, and then you know you have a flat image. You can also use a shape in Photoshop. If you hold, I think it's Shift, you will get a perfectly straight vertical or horizontal line, and that will allow you to line up images. But Ben, what if there isn't a horizon? What do we do then? Well, then you would line up, in the case of cars, the car itself. A good way to do this, headlights. Look for an indication where one line crosses and look for that same level on another, and that will give you a good straight edge. Or perhaps there are multiple straight edges in a photo, in which case what you would do then is usually pick the most prominent. For instance, like an old building that's crumbling and one of the pillars is a bit off and the other isn't. The one that's closer, I would suggest you do straight. But sometimes you follow this rule and everything doesn't quite look right. So actually sometimes a happy medium of both could be the answer. But this is a sort of trial and error thing. It's a technique that is simple to do, but actually takes a bit of time with each photo just to get it how you want. Now, number 3 is think about the light. A lot of people think a photographer is someone who's a master of their camera. And to be fair, they obviously know the settings to an extent, or at least they know how to press the button to take the photo. In reality though, good photographers are actually masters of light, and that's because light has such an incredible impact on the final image. So for instance, it's midday in the summer and you're shooting photos, you're going to have the sun here right above you, which means very harsh shadows, particularly across the face. They're going to be very strong, very defined, and not necessarily even. That is not good. So at that point, you want to go in the shade or have some sort of diffuser. You can buy one, or equally you could just have some foil on some card. So basically you just want to bounce the light off something onto the face to remove that shadow, or at least reduce it. Bright conditions are especially challenging because actually you can easily overexpose a photo, and it's hard to rescue overexposed. It's actually easier to rescue underexposed in a photo. Video, I think it could be the other way around, but anyway, let's not get into that. What I would say is if you can't diffuse and there's no shade, then just embrace a shadow and have it complete, or embrace the fact that the background is blown out, or whatever. It's probably less professional to look at when you have half and half. Now, if you want the best lighting, that is typically in the golden hour, just not to be confused with the golden shower. Now, this is just before sunset and just after sunrise, because you get a lovely golden hue that looks nice. It adds warmth, it just makes images more interesting, more beautiful. Now you can cheat a bit. If it's a cold day, you can actually, in Photoshop and other apps, adjust the color temperature to a more warmer Kelvin, which would be like lower number. But anyway, just go towards orangey red and that will add a similar effect. It won't be quite the same, but it will definitely help a little. Now in the case of car photos, you could also do a polarizing filter, because what this does is cut down on reflections, and obviously cars, unless it's matte, it's going to be shiny paint, and that's going to bounce light at the camera lens, the sensor, and lots of things can happen. You can get chromatic aberration if you're inside and it's a bright day, that kind of stuff. But also a polarizing filter allows you to see through the glass, so you can then do some really cool sort of shots from the outside in and really use that lighting just that little bit more. Also, filters of all kinds typically act like sunglasses, so what they do is they're lowering the amount of light that is hitting the sensor. That means you can have the aperture back open again, and that allows you to have more depth of field, which on a car, as we discussed earlier, is a big object. That's a good thing. And of course, if you're really serious, I would shoot in RAW. It's fine to use JPEGs. They're good for quick turnarounds, and actually the colors of most cameras these days are pretty good, but RAW just allows you to save the most of an image. As in, you've overexposed and you can really bring that back far better than with a JPEG. You can also do more with the colors, you can do more with the sharpness, that kind of stuff. So although the files are bigger, and that means you'll need to make sure your memory card is empty or not as full, definitely go for RAW if you want the best result. Now, point number 4 is consider black and white. I think it's beautiful. Some people might say it's overused, but I think generally it's just a very pretty thing to look at. It adds more contrast. It can make a photo more moody. It also looks timeless. There are a number of ways you can do this, one of which is a bit of software called Nik, N-I-K, not the name. It is paid, but it does a wonderful job because it has various presets and a huge amount of functionality to control the finished image. Some of my best black and white photos have been done with that software, so I would highly recommend it, but that's if you have some money spare. If you don't, use Photoshop or some sort of image editing app, it could be on a smartphone, computer, whatever, and switch to the black and white mode. And usually you'll have controls for red, green, blue, whatever, to bring up the shadows, the blacks, the grey, whatever, and fine tune the image. You could also take the photo itself in black and white. So as opposed to doing it later, you can go into the picture profile or creative star mode, whatever it is on your camera or phone, and just switch to black and white. Now this is good because you can see the finished image before you actually take the photo. However, if you change your mind later and you want color, well, you're stuck because you can go from color to black and white, but black and white to color is, not happening, unless you want to like use paint and color it in, but that's just ridiculous. And for those with loads of money and who want probably one of the best black and white cameras in the world, you could buy the Leica monochrome. Very cool, only does black and white. It's a beautiful camera, but it is incredibly expensive. So that one isn't really a tip, it's just more to tell you that there are cameras out there that do black and white specifically, and that one is probably the most desirable. And tip number 5 is improve the final image. So what I mean by this is you've got the photo, you've taken it, you've done the shoot, whatever it is, and now you're at your computer or on your phone and you are about to edit to make it better. Now, some people take a few photos, some people take thousands. If you're in the latter group, but even if you're not, the best way to do it is go through the photos and give them a star rating. There are different bits of software that allow you to do this, but if it's a 5 to you, it's a keeper. If it's a 4, it's probably worth keeping around, and with some editing, you might be able to make it a 5, and therefore that's worth keeping. But 3, 2, and 1, just disregard. Be ruthless, because otherwise you're going to be there for hours working on a photo that just isn't savable. It's a bit rubbish. Just give up. Don't bother doing that. Imagine in your head that you're showing this picture to 1,000 actual real life people and they're all standing in a queue, okay? Have that in your mind, because that will make you much more strict, more ruthless. Once you've whittled down the photos to your favorites, now what I would do is impose a 10-minute editing time. This is what I do. Works very well. Basically, it stops me from faffing for too long trying to make a bad image a good one. And it stops me making a photo too artificial, which I don't like either. Some people do, sometimes it works really well, but generally I'd rather the photo I've taken at the time was good and I've just merely enhanced it, not changed the sky or done other crazy weird stuff. So by having 10 minutes, it just makes you more efficient. Again, it makes you more ruthless, and it also teaches you to get a little bit quicker with Photoshop. That's not to say that you have to do exactly 10. It might be that you're a bit slower and you need 15 or 20, or it might be that you just want to always get it right first time, in which case give yourself 1 or 2 minutes, doesn't matter. As long as you have some sort of time, basically, that will help massively. In terms of correction itself, I will say the auto function can work quite well in Photoshop. If you have that, just hit it and then you can make some final tweaks to the exact image after. Also consider the light temperature, as I said earlier. If it's a cold day and you want to warm it up, you can go to the right towards orange. Equally though, if it's a warm day but actually you want to convey a sense of cold, you can go back down to blue. I will make a video on exactly how I edit photos and why I do certain things a certain way. What I would say is use vibrance to increase the color, just make it a little bit stronger, get the exposure right. Also maybe add in a bit of sharpness if you want that. If you want to make the photo look older, you can add in the faded effect, bring up the blacks, and also reduce sharpness, that kind of stuff. Basically, just play with all the sliders and then come to a thing that you think looks good and leave it at that. If you're a little unsure, a good thing to do is leave the photo on screen, walk away, go do something else. Go read a book for 5 minutes, go do the washing up, go wash your hands because of a certain virus, whatever. Basically, you just want to step away for a minute, return, and then have a look again, because actually that can make you see things that you hadn't previously seen. And that, as they say in show business, is a wrap. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you found these useful. There are many more photography videos to come soon. So stay tuned, keep washing your hands, stay safe, and I shall see you in the next video.